The standpoint theory is a framework that suggests that an individual's perspective on the world is influenced by their social location and group dynamics, particularly in relation to power structures. So, according to Griffin's intercultural standpoint theory, the social groups within which we are located powerfully shape what we experience and know, as well as how we understand and communicate with ourselves, others, and the world. According to the encoding decoding standpoint theory video at the 3 minute mark, some positions are dominant and some are subordinate or marginalized. Those who occupy the marginalized standpoints can often perceive social relations more comprehensively than those at the center of power. This is because marginalized groups are uniquely situated to achieve a more complete, less partial understanding of social reality, including the workings of dominant groups and systems of oppression. Doug Greco states in the Explain Standpoint Intersectionality article that a standpoint involves a heightened awareness of the world and the power structures that shape it and intentional actions to change them. The documentary Beyond Standing Rock examines conflicts over energy development and tribal rights and provides an illustration of two distinct standpoints, that of the Standing Rock Sioux, or the marginalized, and that of the federal and state government and the energy industry, or the dominant power. The standpoint of the Native Americans is rooted in their cultural and spiritual relationship to the land and water, their history of treaty violations, and their position as a sovereign nation. The standpoint of the tribes produces a cultural knowledge rooted in their traditional teachings. This knowledge includes an understanding of interconnectedness and the environment, emphasizing the value of natural resources over short-term economic gain. The interconnectedness is demonstrated in the documentary by David Archambault's comment at the 1 minute 20-second mark when he states, "Water is life. Water gives life to anything that has a spirit." The quote demonstrates that their standpoint produces knowledge rooted in ancient, authentic cultural teachings, specifically the principle that water is a sacred life source. The standpoint of the energy industry and the government which is enabling the pipeline, is rooted in dominant industrialized framework that prioritizes economic development and profit. It views the land and resources as commodities to be exploited and Native American concerns as secondary or historical obstacles to progress. The cultural knowledge produced by this group is the knowledge that system is a knowledge system that focuses on risk-benefit analysis based on quick economic gains and minimum legal standards about sovereignty and consultation. Their knowledge is partial because it overlooks the intangible cultural and spiritual value of the land and the water. It was not intended for the pipeline to go on the reservation, but just north of the reservation. However, the tribe believed that the land was taken illegally and that it's still considered sacred land, and that they were not properly consulted. So in the documentary at the 13-minute 52 mark, Julie Federchak, when discussing the meetings not being held on Standing Rock, she stated, "We weren't obligated, and it isn't our practice to have hearings in locations where the infrastructure isn't being located." This comment shows that the government's aim was to meet minimal legal requirements and they had no desire to gain perspective from the native tribes. So, as the theory primer article states, hegemony provides a framework for understanding how dominant groups in society maintain their dominance, not just through coercive means, but also through cultural and ideological practices. The prime example of hegemony in the Beyond Standing Rock documentary is the government and pipelines company's structural power to approve the pipeline. It demonstrates that the dominant system prioritizes national economic interest and fossil fuel industry's profits over the treaty-protected rights and survival of the tribe. So in this case, the ideological practice is the cultural acceptance that massive energy infrastructure and corporate profits are symbols of progress that naturally surpass the cultural, legal, and environmental rights of the indigenous communities. The dominant group's control was challenged in the public sphere. The theory primer article defines public sphere as the space where individuals can come together to discuss and debate matters of common interest. The public sphere became crucial because the global movement driven by the media and social media allowed the marginalized standpoint to reach a much wider audience. The attention directly challenged the dominant group's narrative of progress. So the video from Kimberly Crenshaw on intersectionality defines intersectionality as an analytical framework for understanding how aspects of a person's social and political identities combine to create different modes of discrimination and privilege. This is demonstrated by the differing viewpoints on the pipeline based on identity. While some residents, often non-native, supported the project, viewing it as immediate economic benefit and employment, the Native American residents strongly opposed it. This stemmed from the intersection of their identities, where the pipeline threatened their water supply, sacred sites, and their treaty rights or their sovereignty. The threat was compounded by their position as historically marginalized group. It shows that a person's overlapping identities dictate the level and type of risk they face, creating a threat for the Native Americans that was not shared by the dominant group. So the theory primer article also states that structural imperialism describes systematic domination of peripheral nations by core nations through economic and cultural pressures. Structural imperialism applies to the conflict in Beyond Standing Point or Beyond Standing Rock by showing that the struggle is driven by an unequal ongoing power struggle. The powerful core benefits by extracting resources and profit, while the periphery or the Sioux tribe is left with all the environmental risk and cultural damage. The pipeline is a clear act of economic exploitation where the system is structurally set up to prioritize the core's wealth over the periphery's sovereignty and survival. The Beyond Standing Rock documentary powerfully illustrates how standpoints rooted in power differences lead to very different realities. The conflict was not just a disagreement over a pipeline, it was a collision between dominant standpoint, which prioritizes quick profit and legal minimums, and the marginalized standpoint, which offers a comprehensive moral truth rooted in interconnectedness and sovereignty. The film's main point is that to truly grasp a social conflict, we must prioritize the viewpoints of those most heavily affected by the multiple overlapping forms of injustice.